Master of Masters is a being cloaked in mystery. We know very little about him, but I believe we may have some kind of answer hidden in plain sight. My theory is that the Master of Masters is able to separate his heart into pieces, 7 of which he bestowed upon others. 6 of these housed in his 6 apprentices, and 1 in a person that will come as a massive shock. We know that taking control of someone's heart is prevalent in Kingdom Hearts. It's as if there is a container, and the stronger heart can take control of that container, and through that, take control of the body and mind of that person. We see this firsthand when Master Xehanort possesses Terra in Birth by Sleep, and we see Terra fighting back inside of the body multiple times in the series, confirming that hearts can coexist in a body, aware and awake. However, there is another type of possession, or stagnant residence I guess you could say. This is showcased with our main protagonist, Sora. Sora holds 3 extra hearts in his container, Roxas, Ventus, and Xion, confirmed in Dream Drop distance. They exist within Sora and subtly influence his gestures and sometimes even take over his voice and thoughts, as seen in Kingdom Hearts 3 when he interrupts a conversation, saying that he's going to save Aqua. This type of residence in the heart is further confirmed when Ventus is talking with Aqua about how he could see through Sora's perspective. We also are shown how closely knit Sora and Ventus' hearts are when Sora awakens Ventus' heart, seeing his station of awakening being clearly underlaid beneath Sora's. Even though they were 2 hearts, their stations seem to exist within the others. But you might ask why Roxas and Xion's hearts are not visible if only Ventus is asleep. I say that because it seems like Roxas was aware and searching for a way to come back rather than waiting for Sora to awaken him. And Xion, honestly we aren't too sure how she is back yet, whether from the past or if she freed herself from Sora's heart off screen. Xion gets knocked into Sora, and this is exactly when Axel remembers Xion. So maybe Xion's memories were able to transfer through Sora's body into this potential past version of Xion. In my opinion, they would be similar to how Ventus emerged from Sora's, since Ienzo speaks about how there seems to be 3 hearts that have now melded with Sora's, grown silent and indistinct. So this seems to indicate all 3 hearts would be the same in how they awaken, although they would not need to have the power of waking to awaken them since their hearts are not asleep like Ventus's. Contrastingly, when we are fighting Vanitas in Birth by Sleep, we see that the stained glass we are standing on actually has both Vanitas and Ventus, to indicate that both are aware and both are fighting for the possession of the container to control the mind and body. This confirms some things, that their station of awakening can be connected in a certain way to others' hearts visually, and a person can coexist and hibernate inside someone else, having minimal effects on their personality and behavior, but also having the ability to manipulate their actions. I want to draw off these 2 points to make some rather interesting connections. In Kingdom Hearts Chi, we are given the choice of which union we want to be a part of, and it displays to us the station of awakening. What's interesting in this is that each foreteller is displayed on 1 stained glass, and what's even more intriguing is that the Master of Masters symbol can be seen in the center of it. Do you notice anything off about this? Look at the foreteller's eyes. They are a different color from what we see as of now. All of the foretellers have yellow eyes, from their masks at least, except for Ira, who actually has red for some unknown reason. However, from the stained glass, we see that each one has a different color. Another thing is that in previous stained glass, the person whose heart we were entering was displayed as a full body. This one does not have any commanding presence though. What does this mean? To me, this seems more symbolic then. In the stained glass of Sora, the different circular faces represented a different connection to the people he was close to, and then the symbol around him, which is the crown, that symbolized him. I would say this is similar then. We have the circular faces that represent the connection, and then the Lux stars that would symbolize them. However, we are still missing a body with which to represent whose heart this is, unless the Master of Masters is supposedly this container, showing its connections to the foretellers. However, if this were the case, wouldn't the Master of Masters have Lucio as well in his stained glass? In Birth by Sleep, we also see Sora's stained glass when he was a little boy, not showing his body, but essentially his experiences, or connections rather. The main point I want to make with this is the eye color and the connections to the Master of Masters. Interestingly enough, the background stained glass does not have any connections or faces, just the Master of Masters symbol, and the Lux star. For those unaware, eye color is a big thing in Kingdom Hearts. For a while, many people thought that if someone had yellow eyes, this means they were being possessed by Xehanort. I feel like this actually is a much bigger point to make that should be in a different video to really encapsulate it. But to put this short, if someone is possessed by darkness, their eye color seemingly changes to yellow. I say darkness because every single Heartless has yellow eyes, but most importantly, the purebloods created for the Dark Realm have these yellow eyes. Now, if Xehanort is being possessed by darkness, which we get a hint to in the opening cutscene of Kingdom Hearts 3, then anything that he then possesses would have these yellow eyes, which we do see. But the foretellers have yellow and red eyes, way before Xehanort being possessed by darkness, and well before he even existed. The only things we have seen so far with red eyes have been nightmares and the Inversed. I do not think they have any relevance with Era, but it is still something attributed with darkness to have red eyes. My next point is that hearts can hibernate and coexist in a container seemingly unknown to the body and mind. Why is this important? Well, let's take a look at the Master of Masters' apprentices. The Master of Masters' apprentices are a very interesting group of individuals that were appointed the titles of foretellers after the Master of Masters gave them each a copy of the Book of Prophecies, besides Luxu, since he needed to stay pure to then create the Book of Prophecies by using his Keyblade and journeying through the ages. From the back cover short movie, it seems that the foretellers started their unions between being given their roles and when the Master of Masters left, or a little after. It's not very clear, but they still retain the title foreteller instead of union leader primarily. We see from their masks that all of their eye colors are yellow, except Era's, which is red. While I was editing, I actually noticed that in Kingdom Hearts Union Cross, Era actually has yellow eyes. I'm not really sure if that means much. I'm probably gonna talk a little bit more at the end of the video about that. But I just wanted to point that out. But their Keyblades don't reflect this. It is assumed the Master of Masters gave each Keyblade to the original apprentices, seeing as Luxu is given a Keyblade, and Nomura states something along these lines as well. Which, if you notice animations of Keyblade summoning, this is also interesting, but I think I'll save that for another video actually. This is not the only thing given to them though, and this is very important. Their names as well were given to them. The following are the names in Latin of the 7 sins of the heart. These names are given to the foretellers and Luxu, save for one, Superbia. An interesting point to make is that the box Luxu is tasked to lug around has the name Chi Super initialized on the top, which many people would say is the Master of Masters' true name. Now, why are each of the 6 sins names given to the apprentices? Here's a little more detail to my theory. Their Master of Masters split off from his heart the 7 pieces of the emotions that lead the heart and planted each one into 6 different vessels initially, and then into a 7th. If you literally follow your heart, as they say, may your heart be your guiding key, most of the time it seems to lead them into worse and worse situations. For instance, in Dream Drop Distance, Xigbar, now Luxu as we see, thanks Sora's heart for leading him right into their clutches. How hearts steer us wrong every time. So the fact that the Master of Masters uses this motto seems to hint at a hidden meaning. If the Master of Masters is telling his pupils to follow their hearts, we can see from their behavior the evidence for my claims of them having a piece of the Master of Masters' sins of his heart and theirs. Luxu is seen being given his role to watch and wait. We are told from his writings that it has been quite some time, stretching potentially millennia, but he is unable to put into words how long it has been. The intense longing through this period is also captured in his excerpts, to which he is seen to have a somewhat close kinship with his original companions. Now, whether Xigbar was indeed just a character Luxu was donning, the longing, or maybe could extend to lust for the Keyblade is very evident, driving this character through many tribulations to acquire one. Ava can be seen following the role given to her by the Master of Masters, to assemble in a separate faction the most exceptional Keyblade wielders. Thomas Aquinas talks about avarice in a way that describes it more about how you can't have an excess without having someone else suffer from lacking. If Ava is stealing all of these exceptional Keyblade wielders from the unions, she is, regardless of her intentions, causing the other unions to not be at their full potential. But when we see her in Union Cross, her intentions seem much more motivated by greed, as we see her address the player many times, wanting him to join their ranks. For the next few foretellers, their names and their associated meanings seem to have been mixed. Era's fascination with the Book of Prophecies is made clear immediately, as soon as his character case is introduced. This obsession can be seen later in back cover as we see the Master of Masters always saying he's reading the book, seeing scenes where he's reading and rereading passages from the book. This overindulgence leads to a lack of leadership and causes Aced to want to intercede. Gula is seen as a far more carefree individual, although this demeanor doesn't mean that he is not smart and calculated. The quote that sticks out to me the most is the following: "If I'm going to have to actually put in real effort to stop things getting sketchy, I'll pass." Another time he seems to speak with little care is when he tells the player of the Keyblade War, saying, "But does it even matter?" From the way Gula holds himself, almost every scene he is nonchalantly sitting about. Aced's role seems to make this character envious from the initial time we hear about it, to be ready to essentially overthrow Ira if he feels he could do a better job. For most of the scenes with Aced, we see time and time again that he was disappointed in not being the leader, telling Ira that he could do a better job, resentful of his position. But it all boils down to Aced being envious of the power Ira holds, and upset for not seeing the job done the way he wants it to be done. One could argue that Aced seems to display anger a lot more prominently. However, I would argue that the anger we do see stems more from a place of jealousy. Envy. We hear little of her role, only the ending, which is, to sum it up, observe the others, to be a mediator, to be fair. So it can be assumed that possibly her role lends more light to her wrath. Wrath has a trait that causes division between people. It's not necessarily physically shown anger, thus her role outlines this by having her passively direct information, spying on her comrades. This creates potentially unintentional divides within the group. However, since we know so little of her role, maybe her actions behind the scenes prove otherwise. Finally, we have the Master of Masters. In back cover, his demeanor is humorous, boisterous, and obnoxious, though to me it's quite charming. However, it's clear that he does a lot of his big talk and holds in himself a lot of pride. We see this when Gula figures out the lost page's reason for being taken out, when he talks with Ira, as he casually looks back to see if Ira is watching him, and many other times. It's clear that he definitely has this vein of pride within him. As more of an addendum, there are these odd hourglasses at the end of 3D. There are 6 here, and each color represents a different sin, according to Dante, and if they represent a sin, they have some kind of link to the apprentices of the Master of Masters. Purple for pride, orange for gluttony, yellow for envy, red for wrath, and blue for lust. The light blue could be lumped into the blue potentially to represent sloth. The foretellers seem to have identical halves of these objects hanging from their cloaks, save for their color. Ira has purple, Envy has light blue, Aced has orange, Ava has light green, Gula has blue. So while the colors do not match here, the objects do seem to be kind of a nod to the past, especially with all the time references with young Xehanort, as well as his connection to the Master of Masters. With these traits being divided among 7 different people, it seems clear that these influential pieces of heart can be put into vessels. We also see this partly with the new organization designed to house 13 different Xehanorts. We also know that Xigbar states that he is half Xehanort, which means pieces of a heart can enter and lie dormant in a heart, since we still see Xigbar behaving the same way as he did before, but physically different. More of this evidence can be seen when Ventus has a piece of his heart taken away, and Sora fills it with his new heart. And finally, what's more interesting is the fact that the Master of Masters was young Xehanort's guide, which means that this heart possession was more than likely learned from the Master of Masters. But if my theory is that the Master of Masters split his heart into 7 pieces, one for each sin or emotion-driven guiding part of the heart, then the only name that's missing is pride, which we do see on the box. We do see that the Master of Masters shows this trait though, however, he soon disappears. Well, why did he disappear? I have 2 different theories for this to be the case. The first is simply he went to a different world, or world line, or reality after he gave his pieces of heart away, but he seems to imply that something specific needed to happen for him to disappear, so I don't believe this is to be the case. My other theory is that if indeed the Master of Masters would disappear if his heart was split into only 7 pieces and then separated into different individuals, then the only reason the Master of Masters could return would be if one of those pieces were freed. And we do see him return in the trailers of Remind. When Vanitas enters Ventus, we see him disappear as he forms back with Ventus. If my theory is correct in that the Master of Masters split his heart into 6 pieces and he himself held on to the pride part, then he would still exist. What I mean is that when Vanitas returns the piece of heart he has to Ventus, he disappears, meaning any amount of heart, whether a piece or whole, maintains a body's form. The Master of Masters still has a piece of heart left, thus if this logic persists, he would retain his form as well. This brings me to who I think is holding that piece of the Master of Masters. With all this backing information, who do I think is the Master of Masters hiding inside of? Ventus. That's quite an accusation to make. However, there actually is evidence to back this claim up. What do we know about Ventus? We know that he was around at the time of the original Keyblade War, was part of the Dandelions, and actually was one of the new Union leaders that the Master of Masters selected. So if the Master of Masters faded away right before the original Union leaders began their endeavors, then Ventus would have been around for the Master of Masters to insert the last piece of his heart into him. Now why do I think that? If we focus on Birth by Sleep, there's one thing in particular that sticks out to me: Vanitas. Vanitas resembles the Keyblade wielders who were overcome by darkness by their desire of Lux. His Keyblade also resembles that of the Clock Tower in Daybreak Town, having the gears all along the Void Gear. His Keyblade also sports the Master of Masters' eyes in the Keyblade, something only stemming from the Master of Masters and from the Master of Masters to Xehanort. If Vanitas was defeated by Ventus in the end of Birth by Sleep, and his heart was released by the Keyblade, as we've seen this from 356 over 2 days, where it is explained that only the Keyblade can release hearts, then this would mean that the Master of Masters could then become present again since Vanitas has given up his heart, if Vanitas was brought forward from the past rather than being recreated. Now, those are all fine pieces of evidence, but they aren't necessarily hard, concrete evidence. I believe the final piece of evidence is the most compelling part. Vanity is also another interpretation for pride, and Vanitas stems from the word vanity. This name was given by Master Xehanort though, but from the recent trailers in Kingdom Hearts 3, it seems as if the Master of Masters has been leading young Xehanort, guiding him and setting him on the path he is supposed to be on. Also, how would Xehanort know how to separate pieces of a heart without any guidance? If the Master of Masters is guiding Xehanort, then this kind of knowledge would make sense. Interestingly enough, the first time we see Vanitas, he is masked, just like the foretellers. Although he does reveal his face, maybe being a hint that we will see more apprentices become unmasked as well. The Master of Masters' last piece of heart would reside in Ventus, asleep until he was needed. And we noticed that only a piece of Ventus' heart was taken away when Master Xehanort extracted the darkness from Ventus. And if it's only a piece of the Master of Masters' heart, along with the darkness Ventus is holding since every heart contains darkness from my previous theory video, then that would make sense, right? And the reasoning behind Ventus' actual heart being fractured in the process could be the same as why Sora could not extract Roxas, or Xion, or Ventus' heart, for the reason being that they had merged with his heart. Furthermore, the symbol that symbolizes the unversed can be seen on the coats that were supplied by the Master of Masters, signifying to me that the Master of Masters is somehow related to Vanitas. I also think they're trying to draw some connection between the foretellers, Lushu, and Vanitas through his name, since they all represent sins. Finally, remember before about how it was saying yellow eyes means that they are being possessed by darkness? We also see a being calling themselves darkness in the world line Kingdom Hearts Union Cross is currently in. This darkness seems to have a lot of knowledge, even going so far to know that the worlds created from the Book of Prophecies are datascapes. We can rule out Lushu as he writes about this in Kingdom Hearts 3, recognizing this dark presence but distancing and making himself distinct from it. All the foretellers except Ava seem to have been zapped into a different world or world line, so it's possible that this could be Ava. But I believe it to be the Master of Masters, or at least the part of the Master of Masters that has to become Vanitas. Another interesting thing is that when questioning Vanitas at the end of Kingdom Hearts 3, he states that he is darkness, and it seems to be a double meaning, thus possibly alluding to this dark force in Kingdom Hearts Union Cross. If Vanitas is solely the pride piece in the Master of Masters' heart, not possessing anyone at first but simply being a heart without form, kind of how Xehanort's Heartless was without form but still retaining his heart, then he would have knowledge of how the world works since it would not be lying dormant in another vessel. And then from this form, he waited to hide inside Ventus when the time came. This leads me to believe that Ventus was supposed to be the 7th vessel for the Master of Masters. In conclusion, to summarize, I believe that the Master of Masters was able to separate his heart into the 7 pieces that guide the heart: pride, envy, anger, sloth, greed, gluttony, and lust, and was able to store these into 6 of his newly named apprentices: Envy, Ira, Aced, Ava, Gula, and Lushu. He passed down this ability and guided young Xehanort, where Master Xehanort one day separated the piece of heart in Ventus that the Master of Masters stored into Vanitas, which stems from vanity, which is another interpretation for the sin that is pride. Okay, so thank you guys for sticking around to the end. As always, I want to go over the caveats of the theory. This is such a long theory that, or I guess the production of it, like getting it all, finding all the evidence and stuff for that took me a lot longer than the previous video. So I might actually put off some of this until like another video, but I want to go over a couple of them. But if you do have like questions about it, I usually respond or try to respond to everybody in the comments. So if you leave it, I'll probably respond to it, and then I might make a video with it. But we'll see. But like I said, this was a long one. But it was really fun. Like the reason it was a long one too was because the editing I did in this. Like I said in the previous video, I think I said in the previous video. I kind of want to like learn as I'm doing this. So this was kind of like I wanted to like get an overlay, kind of get a style, kind of how I like it. So it's still kind of rough. There's a lot of fading in and out. I might change that. But I kind of like that aesthetic, but we'll see. But yeah, so that's probably why it's also a little bit on the longer side. But yeah, I think I learned a lot through it again, like I did my previous video. I kind of want to pick up animation, like drawing animation, because I've always been into that kind of stuff. But we'll see. I don't know if I have time to do that as well, but I'll see if I can at least work on it. But anyway, so before we actually get into the caveats too, I want to give some thanks to the people that kind of encouraged me and helped me through this process. Kingwell the 7th, she looked over my scripts and kind of encouraged me through the process, as did Bioroxis, except Bioroxis I didn't actually show him my script this time. He just kept kind of pushing me to keep going, which is nice. And then Damo, he helped proofread some of it as well. And then Kimchu, he did amazing amount. Like he helped me. He's kind of my art guy. So like I go to him and ask questions and stuff, and he'll like help me out with some stuff. Yeah, he actually helped me make the background. I got like the general design, and then he made it look a lot better. So yeah, big thanks to those guys. They're awesome. So the first caveat is darkness refers to the master. So it probably isn't the master of masters. But at the same time, it could be to throw us off as well. But actually, in my theory, I state that it's either the master of masters or it's the pride piece of the master of masters. So kind of what I'm thinking, and I don't think I kind of explained this well enough, is that each of the hearts each of the pieces of heart that are like an era and envy in them, they are stagnant, so they aren't like self-aware, I guess, because I think they're kind of like in this stagnant residence. I don't think I drew on that enough, but their eyes are like the mask that the master gave them are yellow. So that's kind of like my thinking behind maybe it's referring to that they're being possessed, but they're not like actively being possessed, if that makes sense. And another caveat is that Ventus's eyes are blue, and if he was possessed, then his eyes would change to yellow. But again, this isn't really a caveat, because Sora is holding all these people's hearts in his heart, and well, his eyes might be blue, but like his eye color doesn't change to them. But again, with darkness, it seems to change their eye color to yellow. So yeah, I'm not sure really if it's like a caveat or if it's just like a note. If stagnant residence doesn't change the eye color, then that could still be true. But yeah, I just wanted to also bring that up. And then kind of circling back, Ira has yellow eyes in Kingdom Hearts Union Cross, but he has red in back cover. So if back cover is like the start, then, and I kind of need to give credit to Damo because he's been talking about this lately. We're kind of in this like cycle, and so, or a simulation, I guess, if this is like more of a datascape. So Kingdom Hearts Union Cross and that kind of stuff are iterations of that. So Ira might have had red eyes, but then in the program he has yellow eyes. No basis, obviously, for that. We might get more information with new pieces of the story coming out in Kingdom Hearts Union Cross, which I kind of wanted to get this out before that, and I think I did. I haven't heard anything yet. But the Japanese story is coming out soon, and I wanted to get this out too before it, so that I could like maybe see if I'm on the right track. But I might make like an addendum to this to be like, oh yeah, this is wrong, kind of like, I don't know. Another caveat is kind of Vanitas isn't really like the Master of Master has his own chess piece, and I think Vanitas has his own chess piece. So it would be kind of weird in that sense if the Master of Master is holding onto Pride, and then Vanitas is also Pride. But there's also this other thing too that I think before the 7 deadly sins were like coined, is that there was another sin, which was vanity, which is Vanitas. So it was like closely knit to Pride, and I think that's when they like combined them. But if that's the case, then maybe Nomura is getting inspiration from that. I'm not really sure, but that's kind of a caveat. But again, Ira and them all have their own pieces too. But then if Vanitas really was kind of part of that group, then he would have his chess piece there as well. And they only list 7 black pieces, so it's like, I don't know. Another not really caveat again, but I mean something to point out. The animals do match the sins, apparently. It's on the wiki page of the Kingdom Hearts Union Cross. But to me, I found that the sins and the characters seem to align more with what I presented. Obviously, it's just an opinion. But it seems kind of odd to me that they showed more of these characteristics. But again, maybe I'm just misinterpreting it. And then the final thing I wanted to note, actually, is Vanitas is in the cathedral in Dream Drop Distance. And I think he's more of an apparition. But the fact that he appears with young Xehanort is kind of weird, especially because when Ansem and Xemnas both appear with young Xehanort, Nomura made like a point to make like they had to travel with him. They couldn't travel, like they couldn't be there without young Xehanort because there was some kind of like time thing. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he did make it a point to say Ansem and Xemnas can't be there without young Xehanort. So the fact that Vanitas is there kind of, to me, makes it seem more like he's traveling through time as well, which is what I pointed out in my theory, is if he gave up his heart and then he was able to travel forward before that point. I'm kind of probably being confusing. But anyway, Vanitas would have been in the future like Ansem and Xemnas, so they wouldn't have been like the most recent form of them. Hopefully that makes sense. I might take this part out because I don't want to confuse anybody else. But anyway, I think that's it. I can rattle on and on. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys want to subscribe, that'd be awesome. I also tweet out stuff to do with like the production of this video and the previous one. I'll put out little teasers and stuff. So that's been a lot of fun for me. So if you want to follow and subscribe, that'd be great. Don't have to. I always hate it when YouTubers are like, remember to like and subscribe, but it does help. It like shows me that you guys are engaging and stuff. But honestly, if you guys just want to comment, that's great too, because I like hearing your guys' opinions on what I am presenting, and then we can discuss it more. I like that discussion. And I really enjoy Vanitas. So the fact that I got to do a theory like incorporating him was really awesome. He's probably like one of my favorite villains in Kingdom Hearts. Oh, and I wanted to put his song in here, but I don't know, I couldn't get it to fit. Like it sounded kind of off and stuff. So I might actually overlay it in the background here, because I don't know, I love that song, but I just couldn't find a way to like fit it in. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed.